Mechanism?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Sagar. Sagar, you are from Rajasthan, right?
Yes, sir.
Why you choose the management as the optional?
Sir, management is a subject which I studied latest in my MBA, and I had 5 years of investment banking experience. So I thought it aligns well with my knowledge which I've gained, and then I was also in touch with the management subject for a while. And rather, I don't understand why people from management background do not take management as the option, because it is a very easy subject where it is very natural for somebody from management stream to come and take. So I thought it was really aligns with my interest and also with my chances in the examination.
Okay. As a candidate from Rajasthan, what do you think about the current status of your state? That means, what are the changes or development required in your state?
Sure, sir. So one of the biggest stage of evolution in Rajasthan's journey as the economic prospects is its industrialization. So currently, a very strange detail about Rajasthan is a lot of businessmen are from Rajasthan, but then they are not establishing business in Rajasthan. So the community which are very business oriented in Maharashtra or in Calcutta or in Chennai, they are from Rajasthan. But then, so one of the major impediments in the growth of Rajasthan would be the economic success in terms of industrialization. The other would be the social mobility of the caste and the vulnerable sections to come to the mainstream in terms of organized or unorganized employment and setting up the labor market effectively. And the third would be the overall human capital development in terms of women empowerment or bringing marginalized community to the mainstream. These are the challenges which Rajasthan faces in the near term.
Okay, good. In generalized way, which are the challenges facing in your state now?
In Rajasthan.
Hmm.
Sure, sir. So first and foremost, the challenges are multifold in terms of economic aspects. Would be the providing gainful employment to the large youth which is coming out, and secondly would be not just allowing them to get into a job for a salaried personnel, but also being a job enabler themselves and job creator. So rather setting up the market forces there so that they are employed and they also create employment. That would be on the economic front. On the social front, sir, it would be the caste-based violence or gender-based violence, which is prominent there in certain pockets of Rajasthan, and also bringing dignity and also to enable women to come forward and gain their respect with rightful status in the society. And sir, on the economic front, it would be the increase in desertification which is happening in the state, and then the water shortage and the scarcity and the agrarian crisis which is there because of faulty practices. So these are the multifold challenges which Rajasthan faces.
Okay. In your answer, you frequently mentioned about the certification and all. So, which are the important geographical regions in Rajasthan?
Sure, sir. Sir, Rajasthan being the largest state in India has a diverse economic zone, agro-economic and also climatical zone. So primarily the 60% of Rajasthan in the western side is desert area. So it has this arid and the semi-arid climate. Then it has Aravalli range which runs from northeast to southwest. So it divides Rajasthan, and then so there are mountainous regions there. And then on the southern side of Rajasthan, it is a plateau region, and then on the eastern side, it is a plain area where slight some amount of water is also available, and then the river plains are also there. So essentially, plain, desert, Aravalli, mountainous region, and also plateau region.
Okay, good. Now, India reaching the highest population ratio, right? Then, do you think is it good or bad in our economy or in the future?
Correct, sir. Sure, sir. Sir, India as a demography, what it had, it is also a strength, and also if not managed well could turn into a disaster. So both demographic dividend and also disaster. Now how we reap the benefit is upon us, and essentially one of the primary focus also of the current dispensation is to enable the human capital growth and skill development, and to enable youth employment creation. And it could turn into a disaster if not managed well, where social crises could appear, where people not finding jobs could turn into a big issue, and then law and order issues, internal security challenges could also arise. But India as a labor has a large potential as a consumption economy, and also what it has to offer into an aging world. So, sir, I believe India has a lot to offer to the world. It is upon us how we benefit in the next 2 or 3 decades.
Okay. Then when you enter into the service, there will be a clash between your human values and your official life. How can you manage this?
Sure, sir. Sir, first and foremost, as a public servant and as a civil servant, we need to realize that nation comes first. And it is upon us to understand that this is the kind of job profile that we are getting into, and then to serve the nation and mass is real, the summum bonum, as we say, is the main primary goal for a civil servant, for which governance never stops. 24 hours, state has to be active and ready. So I cannot be the cog in the wheel and not being part of the system. Uh, which means that essentially, sir, there has to be a balance between the family value and the work value, where my family would also support it and I will also give enough time and opportunity with my family. They will be part of my support system.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, let's move to the answer.
So Sagar, you have worked with consultancy firms
Yes.
and you have also worked as an investment banker.
Yes.
So how do you find the recent financial markets trends? Is it sustainable or it is just a hype?
Uh, yes, sir. So currently the level of financial markets, the level of liquidity in the market is slightly a lot, which is essentially enabling the markets to reach a very high premium valuation in terms of stock market valuation. Uh, but also there is a robust macroeconomic framework to support that, because India has not been affected by the economic crisis which is there in the global world where the inflation is at all-time high. India has recently done, and it is also one of the brightest spot as IMF has also said out. And then Indian government has taken structural reforms. So essentially, sir, it's a mix of both the macroeconomic framework and also the external stability that India has gathered, so that it has become a destination for the investment activity all across the world. So it is a moment of high expectation from Indian market. That's why the level of investments and these stock market indices are at all-time high.
Okay. So you have worked with the private sector.
Yes.
Now you are aspiring to be joining in the public sector. How different you find the private sector culture
Right.
from the public sector culture of the organizations?
Right, sir. Sir, there are a lot of differences but also similarities in both private sector and public sector. One of the major differences that we see in private sector is that they are more agile in terms of adapting to the external environment or the crisis, and then they have a strategic flexibility also to their vision and to the management of their human resources, and the kind of resources that they can put into, and the kind of focus also they have is slightly narrow than is public servant, which allows them to be more dynamic in their behavior. While on the other side, a public organization being a structure of state, it has a certain restrictions in terms of the dynamic and the agility or flexibility that it can create. But it is a strong support system where they have a certain rule-based, SOP-based driven mechanism. But then there are a lot of reforms that government is also pushing through via Mission Karm Yogi or through agility or through digital governance.
So are you saying that government systems are comparatively less efficient as compared to private sector?
Sir, I believe efficient. They're both efficient, but the way of functioning is different because they are trying to address two different problem statements. One, private sector essentially they have a focus on one particular sector or one particular market. That's why they have certain flexibilities. But a government organization has a larger and focus where multiple stakeholders are involved, and then the impact they also have is real. So they are also efficient, but they can adapt certain practices from private market, and the vice versa is also true.
Okay, what kind of practices they can adopt from the private sector?
Okay, sir. Sir, first and foremost, I believe the agile management, which is both democratic management and which is more decentralization form of governance, could be one of the biggest value add that the public sector can take from private sector. The other would be the merit based performance appraisal, where in corporate sector there is more accountability and transparency in the way functioning is done, so that it is both merit based. This is one of the aspects that private public sector can also bring in, which is more merit based. And then those who are the system is manufactured in such a way that those who perform are rewarded better. And then need based training and development assessment should also be done slightly better in private sector public sector. The other could be, sir, larger focus on creating and enabling and using the data, that that India is also focusing upon in the last half decade or 1 decade or so, which would essentially turn our public sector into learning organization.
Okay. And is there anything which the private sector can learn from the public sector?
Yes, sir. So one of the foremost things that a private sector should learn is the business ethics and the corporate social responsibility from a public sector while giving to society and not expecting much because you are part of the stakeholder. That is one and foremost thing. The other is also having a broader vision. Uh, a public sector, a private sector are static to one market or one particular sector, but they can learn the idea of broadening up the scale and the potential. The other aspect could also be the diversity in the work group, human force. Private sector should rather encourage more diversity and to enable people from the different groups.
Okay. So should we implement the concept of reservation in the private sector also for diversification and inclusion?
Sure, sir. Sir, I believe the challenge to that or the reason why reservation is being talked about and why we want to introduce is to provide employment to the youth. But providing employment cannot be at the cost of efficiency or to create the ease of doing business. When we restrict labor for a private sector, considering reservation, there we are competing against the other markets, and then those labors over there would rather not be maybe not the appropriate labor, or it would create a restriction for the corporate businesses. So it might be against the whole ethics of what we are trying to do in terms of ease of doing business and the business reforms.
I get it.
And
So recently, the government is saying the recently budget in recent budget, the government basically wants that private sector should step in
yes,
and public sector should slowly withdraw from the commercial services.
yes, sir.
So in that case, if we keep reservation out of the review, then how will we will include the excluded sections of society into the mainstream
Sure, sir.
in the productive sectors of economy?
Sure, sir. Sir, first and foremost, India has to invest in its human capital development, where we are skilling the youth. It should not be that the private sector is forced to employ certain sections of people. Our people should themselves be capable enough to be employed everywhere, and there should be balanced regional development as against certain pockets of cities or the urbanization happening where more people are developed. And to answer the problem directly into diversity or reservation aspect, so there could be particular index like diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) index, where we are rewarding private sector to hire from different communities or vulnerable marginal. It should not be just social based reservation from vulnerable marginal section like transgenders or from tribals, or DI index would be there, and then and then we should rank the companies. Whichever companies are doing well on DI index, they could be given tax break or certain incentives should be given to them. So rather than a direct push to hire and force arm twist private sector, we should let the market economy function as such and allow them or nudge them to certain aspects of inclusivity, as is done in the Western world as well.
Right. So as you have management optional, how your learning from the management optional or management as a subject can help you in the administration?
Sure, sir. Sir, from my technical expertise and my background of education in management, I believe I have the professional experience and expertise in financial management or revenue expenditure business management, which are primarily useful in government's financial and revenue matters. And due to my work experience as an investment banker, I would be deeply interested and involved into growing the investment potential or the industrialization or bringing the development in terms of urbanization and growing the investment capital. And thirdly, working as a management and also from a work experience, I have learned the art of teamwork, how to take orders and how to be empathetic and how to show the leadership skill and the accountability and transparency which is needed for that. So how to work in a diverse group and how do you manage a timeline and what are the challenges that people face while working together. So these are the aspects which motivate me and also I can utilize while working in the public service.
Right. So recently there was a statement by one of the CEO of a company that now we should work and mandate 70 hours a week.
Yes, sir.
So what is your take on that?
Sure. Sir, I believe state cannot make a dictum about it or force somebody to work as per the hours. It is upon an individual considering their background or what their potential and their aspirations are. Uh, but the debate over there is the need for the productivity. and how do we increase the productivity, how does the labor productivity increase in terms of, and the measure for that may not be just increment in the number of hours that somebody sits in office, but it should be rather in skill upgradation and skill development, and focusing on labor or capital intensive technologies also, like the utilization of AI, MI, machine learning, all those robotic or the automation technologies. So a person has to be motivated, and also utilization of technology to grow into productivity. So
Right.
that should be the way forward.
Okay. So as you have worked with the private sector already, what excites you to switch over from the private sector to the public sector?
Sure, sir. So from my experience in private sector, I have gained a lot of knowledge and skills, and it has allowed me to create a network of privileged people, or privileged in terms of education, and how resourceful they are. So I have learned a lot, but over the years I have also realized I need to broaden my scope of work, where I want to create, where I want to directly contribute to nation building. And considering my background also, where my father is in railway, so this is the certain personal values that I have been imbibed upon me. They have always forced me and motivated me to have a larger horizon and larger context of.
So that is also possible in the private sector. You are a graduate of the top management institute of India, so you can do that in the private sector. Even government want private sector to step in more.
Yes, sir.
So the scale and innovation, agility, everything is possible in private. So why you want to switch over to public?
So the foremost challenge of working and taking forward my life in a private sector for now is currently my private sector. My focus is slightly narrow, and what I'm doing is slightly indirectly helpful to economy, while also I'm helping in attracting investments, and also helping grow the businesses via investment banking. But I believe a direct role in the nation building can be through civil services, and my expertise and my technology, my awareness and knowledge.
So recently Padma awards were awarded, and how many civil servants got the Padma awards out of more than 100 people? Are you aware about that?
So sorry, sir, I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
I'll look into it.
And how many people from the business community and other social people who could create impact they got the? So the point I want to point is make is that bureaucracy is only one way. You can contribute a bit large, at a big
Yes,
scale in the uh, private sector,
yes, sir.
being out of the system. So are you aware about the restrictions which will be put upon you from the public sector? Restrictions which you face, or the problem which are there while working in the public sector,
Yes,
as
sir.
compared to that you are working in the private sector.
Yes, sir. Uh, Sure, sir. Working in a public sector will also have certain limitations and restrictions, because I need to follow a certain structure and a order, and my way of working has to be within a certain permit and purview, and the agility or the technology I will be using will have certain restrictions to it. But on the other side, sir, it creates an opportunity to be directly in touch with the grassroots and create an impact, which would be slightly difficult, and an indirect way of doing it in the private sector, is what I felt, sir. But I'm also deeply excited and involved into how private sector and what personally my work profile could enable into nation building. And one of the things that excite me is the impact investments sort of side.
Okay. So are you aware about the Black Scholes model of options valuation?
Yes, sir. I'm aware of it.
Can you please explain a bit?
Sure, sir. Sir, I'll take a moment on that.
Sure.
Sir, I'm sorry, sir. I'm not able to recall too much in
Okay.
detail.
So are you aware about the difference between the depreciation and amortization?
Yes, sir. Uh, Sir, depreciation is the loss in value of a tangible asset, a physical asset, let's say a plant machinery. We use it, and then due to the rupture of wear and tear, it depreciates the value. So that is essentially over the useful life period. So we depreciate the cost per purchase price. And amortization is of intangible assets, which could be patent or licenses, trademark, and then we utilize it over the year and we amortize it.
Okay. So recently there was a budget introduced by the government. What are the three major things which you dislike about the budget?
Sure, sir. Sir, I'll take a moment on it, because the
Sure.
budget has been a very remarkable budget in terms of election year. And then, sir, one of the things which was slightly what more could have been probably done, and could be upon increasing the rural consumption, or giving a direct push to consumption based economy, where there has been seen that there might be slight stagnation in the real economy of the unorganized sector, or the labor economy. So giving a push to it, it is slightly missing. And the second could be, sir, uh, for the vulnerable communities in terms of tribals or transgenders, there could be certain more push. But considering, sir, we need to understand that this is also an interim budget, and it is slightly directional in nature, and then it is only vote on account. So the government might be giving a flexibility for the new government to form and create it.
Right. So, are you aware about the increasing role of consultants in the government ministries?
Yes, sir.
Recently, there was some news.
Yes, sir.
So, what do you think are the reasons for increasing use of consultant? And, is it a fault in the human resource policy of the government?
Sir, when we the increasing role of consultant in the government, sir, certainly enables lot of advantages to the governments, where they have data driven decision making, where they have knowledge and expertise of professionals who are working into one particular sector and get a niche knowledge about it. And they also learn from the experiences of the private sector, or from the different other markets where these private sectors work into. So essentially, it gives a push to the vision, and it also serves as a check, where are the government machineries utilizing the right data, or the right performance measure, or the right methodologies for certain actions. On the other side, it also creates certain impact, or certain negative issues could also come around, where essentially the knowledge and the learning and the innovation is sort of outsourced to the private sector, which might demoralize the bureaucracy to not get into the knowledge building aspect, where the knowledge building is being outsourced. So we hire somebody and then we take it, and then there could be also an aspect of conflict of interest, and certain the third could be certain machineries are also the function creep, sort of, where one particular function is being enlarged into and getting into multiple other sectors. So where a consultancy is hired into one particular sector, but then it encroaches upon into certain other projects on this field also.
Okay. So, I give you a situation. Suppose there is a area under your control. You are the district magistrate of that area. Now there is a factory, and in that factory there is a strike by the workers.
Yes, sir.
Now this strike is spreading into big violent, kind of situation in the area. So how will you deal with the situation?
Sir, first and foremost, if there is a law and order imbalance, I need to take a complete control where there is no physical harm or a violence done. So for that, utilization of the police machinery to curb the violence needs to be first focus on that. The secondly, there has to be communication with the union management, or with the workforce, whoever is the leader of the union, to get into a proper discussion and a fair, and where a fair hearing has to be there. What are their concerns, and then what legally what we can do about it. So thirdly, we need to utilize certain other labor dispute or the industrial dispute tribunals if the matter is not solved over the medium period. And also we need to understand what the concerns are, and then is it a recurring event, or is it due to mismanagement, or are the labor being violent due to certain other vested interest. So a holistic strategy has to be devised so that certain events do not occur in the medium or the long term.
Okay. Uh, Suppose you are posted at a place and you are the young officer and you are the head of the department also, and there are people who are older than you in the age,
Yes, sir.
and they're not cooperating with you because they have some problem with you being young and all, like, so they're not trusting you. You don't have much experience in that area. So how will you elicit their cooperation?
Sure, sir. So creating an organization culture where everybody is respected, and then the hierarchy or the chain of command is being followed is primary. So for that, I will ensure with the people of senior age to have a communication in terms of, I will speak to them. Okay, these are our roles, and this is what are our vision, and we are part of the one team where everybody is respected and everybody will be heard. But then there cannot be any encroachment into the hierarchy, or not, or taking the organization culture for a relaxation. So first and foremost, the communication needs to be there. Secondly, sir, there could be sensitivity training could also be done where the senior management or the senior people, they could also get into a training by the HR where they are also told about how the business should work like.
Okay, okay, right. Uh, so you would have heard about the Taylor's principles of management. So in the current times, what is the application of Taylor's principles of management? Can you give some example from the real world, which is touching us on daily basis?
Yes, sir. So I'll take a moment on that. So one of the foremost principle of Taylor's principle of management is scientific selection of best men for the work and also one best way of doing the job. While we may not have one best way of doing the job because research and innovation is a part of business continuous improvement, but we need to hire people and then train them better so that they are able to utilize their potential to the maximum. And essentially, and this is being shown in the public sector where even as a civil servant, when we are after our examination, we are sent to do the training, which is also a classroom training but also a field training. So we are being trained so that we come up to a potential where we can serve our well. This is direct application of Taylor's principle in that way. And the second could be, sir, motivation of an individual could be through fair wages and also enabling them to their learning and development. So if we have a fair wages, everybody is felt rewarded for their work. Essentially, meritocracy comes above any other sort of favoritism. So these are
Right.
the things.
So as you are saying that fair wages should be there, do you think, especially the group A officers, the IAS officers, IPS officers, are they rewarded appropriately in terms of the wages?
Sir, the compensation that the government provides to the civil servants or to group A officers, monetary remuneration is just one component of it, but then there are other perks, the facilities, the amenities that that the government provides, which takes care of the entire uh, holistic remuneration which is provided, and it is certainly appropriate to stay where they are really awarded well for their performance, and then the recognition also that they get because of their extra work is also perfectly fine, sir.
Okay. Do you think there is a work-life imbalance in the top civil services?
Yes, sir. There are challenges in the state machinery in terms of how we run the business. There are challenges in terms of if we want to maintain our work life or how much hours we give to the nation building or to the work. But the problem of working for a nation or the serving the nation is a 24-hour job. It cannot be after midnight it is over or it takes a break. So but this is the nature of the game, sir. I believe everybody who is a leader or who is at a civil services position, we are all aware of this is the nature of the business, so that's why we need to be completely motivated about it.
Right. So, suppose you are posted in a place, and in that area there are very good products by the tribals, by the local people, but they are not properly marketed. So, how can you use the knowledge of your marketing subject for better marketing of the product in your local area?
Sure, sir. Sir, first and foremost, the issue that is there is that if it's not marketed, then probably we are not connecting to the right target segment. Uh, because the tribal products which are being available, they are majorly fetched in the central India's like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, but then the connectivity, the real market could be in Mumbai or could be depending upon the product is a faraway market. So we need to the marketing and the advertisement needs to use the medium which is like let's say social media or Instagram or using influencers who could promote them and create a marketization of the branding has to be there. First, a brand has to be created, it has to be nurtured in terms of the value it promotes, and then the usage of the organic India or the tribe India, those kind of logo has to be created. There has to be a role model around it, or let's say hiring a celebrity for it, and then promoting it through a right mean of communication through television advertisement or through social media or digital entertainment has to be done. So there has to be a concerted push in terms of finding the right target segment and also using the right media and the message. So for which the private sector could come into forming the forward chain linkages and help their expertise.
Right. Do you think China will overpass or surpass the USA in the coming times in terms of GDP?
Sir, recently we have seen while China was growing with a double-digit growth rate for last 2-3 decades, it has relatively slowed down a lot. It is facing its own structural challenges, and currently the GDP of USA has been around 27 trillion, while China is around 19 trillion. While the gap was diminishing last 3-4 years back, but it has slightly stagnated, and China's contribution to world economy, which was around 17%, has come down to 16%, and it is not expected to catch up with China as fast as we were assuming it to be. So, considering the current level of challenges and the structural imbalances that they have, it will be a tall task for China, but certainly it could be achieved.
Right. So last year the government could not achieve its disinvestment target. I mean this current year. So what are the reasons? Is the government is not successful in meeting the targets because of like it is not offering right value or something, or what is the reason?
So there are multiple challenges to achieving government disinvestment target. One is the economic scenario and the macroeconomy around the entire investments, where the investor market, the investor sentiment in itself in the Indian market is not really high in terms of buying and purchasing a government asset, where people are waiting down for the right prices to discover, or they are holding on to their investments. So that is one challenge. The second also is the political risk attached to it, and the political uh, the narrative which is shown around it. But also, sir, we need to understand that the government, rather than disinvestments, is also focusing into the monetization plan, which is being utilized for the NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline. So rather than outright sale or disinvestments, it is rather utilizing the monetization route to achieve the objective.
Okay. Okay. How the monetization is different from disinvestment?
So disinvestment is outright sale of certain percentage share of the company, which could be majority or minority, and so that there is a third party ownership. But in terms of the national monetization plan that the government is pursuing, it is the uh, a time period fixed outsourcing of the assets ownership and control and maintenance, while the ultimate ownership is with the government.
Kind of lease.
Yes, sir. Kind of lease.
Right. So in the government there is a problem of data management. Even though we have various data collection agencies, surveys, and all. So, can you give some technical background and can you give some suggestion based upon your knowledge of quantitative techniques that you would have studied in your management subjects? Can you give some practical suggestion? How can we, improve this data quality as well as data, management?
Sure, sir. Uh, Sir, one of the reasons for the effectiveness of a data survey is the kind of sampling methodology and the survey that we are utilizing. So, for that, sir, the survey has to be representative of the data that we want to generate and gather. So, rather than using a simple clustering survey, we could use the stratified survey methodology, where we are utilizing the strata and then picking the items from each strata, so that we are covering all the market. Or we could use the cluster sampling also. In that case, if we want to, let's say, a smaller region like Rajasthan wants to conduct a survey, it could be there's only cluster survey for the urban cities there. So those primarily the sampling methodology has to be right, so that the sample is representative. Then, sir, the other thing could be in terms of data quality. Uh,
Okay.
sir,
So what are the challenges or what are the limitations of wealth maximization? What are the limitations of wealth maximization objective of the organizations?
sure, sir. Sir, one of the primary limitations is lack of apathy to empathy to the public, where if you are just into wealth maximization, it leads you to get into wrongful use of the business means, where you are utilizing either the way of corruption to get into a tender, and it does not bode well for the business longevity, because your reputational risk is there, and one day satyamev jayate, truth will come out, so it does not work well. And if you are, and the other thing is also competitiveness. If you are into wealth maximization game, but then you are competing with certain other firms which are not in wealth maximization game, where they serve a larger context to society, so you are also challenging your own growth, because the others are also doing better.
Right. So in the capital structure, we normally study that using more debt means tax saving. That means increase in the value of the firm.
Yes, sir.
But in the recent time, we see many firms, they are becoming debt free and then they are getting more value.
Yes, sir.
So why is this contradiction?
Yes, sir. Sir, one of the utilization of the debt, the leverage is to, yes, use the tax advantage value, but then utilizing tax has also a financial distress component to it, and then the business and operational risk to it, where your income expenditure could run as a high component. So what essentially the agency theory and how it turns out as a signaling indicator to the market is that if I have a rich value of cash flow sitting with me, I could utilize the free cash flow to retire my debt and to be more actively involved into and utilizing my own free cash flow and using the retained earning and to plow it back.
Okay, which theory is that? Is there any theory which says this principle which you are suggesting right now?
Sir, one of the primary theory is in itself is signaling theory. Your debt, your capital structure talks a lot about the kind of company or the business value you have. So a lot of companies, in terms of their distress, when during the time of distress, to give a market that no, they are not in distress, they want to retire their debt or they want to repurchase in terms of if their share has gone down, they repurchase their share from the market to invoke sentiments into the market. So it's a signaling theory.
Right. So in the starting of the interview, you told me that performance appraisal is a problem in the government sectors. So what should be done to improve the performance appraisal of the government servants?
Sure, sir. Sir, at multiple level, we need to intervene if we need to make the merit-based performance appraisal system more effective. First and foremost would be the utilization of the management principle of MBO, management by objective, where the objective of a civil servant is fixed from the beginning, and then the participative.
Have you seen the practical implementation of this objective in any company? This system?
Yes, sir. In the firms that I worked with for Ernst and Young, where I was in the investment banking firm, this is what, as a practice, we would do. Where in the beginning of the year, we would try to, maybe not in very strict detail, but we would certainly try to quantify or qualitatively also put out what are our objectives for the year, and then quarterly we would have an update on it with my manager. We'll sitting and take a stock of it, so that at the year end, then there is a final review for it, so that nobody feels out okay where we have achieved or what we have not achieved, but then there is the through the year conversation happening also around it.
Right, right. There is a lot of mistrust between the citizens and the administration.
Yes, sir.
So suppose tomorrow you join as a district magistrate. You also come from a very premier institutions and all. So how will you connect with the people? How will the people connect with you? They will feel comfortable with you working like when you are working there.
Sure.
So looking at your background, they will say, "Oh, this is a very qualified person, very intelligent person." So this trust, this gap further widens. So what can you do to decrease this gap?
Yes, sir. Sir, empathy and compassion are the values utilizing which I can connect with the mass, with the grassroots. And for that, when I'm at the grassroots level, a clear and open communication to them. Consider for whatever grievances that they have, they can come to me and they can talk it out and we can discuss it. And I'll also do an outreach with the mass to tell them these are our work, these are our objectives, and please hold us accountable.
Do you know about any role model which who works like this in bureaucracy?
Sir, there are. I'm not particularly able to recall a few bureaucrats who do this, but there is a practice like on weekend or on certain days they have a revenue court or they have a Jan Sunwai where public connects with their grievances, and then they also have a field visit where they're going out and connecting with the Gram Panchayat or through
So
NGOs.
do you think these words like magistrate, commissioner, these should be replaced by the word manager like we do in the private sector? Why still are continuing with these words commissioner, magistrate and all these words are very heavy and probably these are the words which disconnect the people. They feel, oh, this is a commissioner. So if we replace this with manager, do you suggest that?
Sir, replacing it with manager has its own challenge because the primary function of a manager is to focus on getting the job done by whatever means, by the ideal practices of management. But he's more into the effectiveness of the job. But a term like magistrate or a civil servant, it has a broader context to it. It is not just about the resource utilization to its efficiency, but also to create a social and inclusive
Why this
development.
word magistrate was given?
Sir, it was from the colonial times where magistrate, they also had the judicial power to them, where they also adjudicated
Yeah,
upon
that's
certain
only
matters.
one function.
Ji,
That's
ji.
probably what I'm trying to highlight.
Okay.
That is only one function they're performing, but still that is the primary word being used for their designation. So don't you think it is slightly not practical or outdated word?
Yes, sir, it may
And
be.
in fact, in many places wherever there is a commissionate system, they don't even have the magisterial power. This magisterial power is with the police. So essentially, they are just managers.
Sir, I would not particularly call them just as managers yet. Uh,
So then, what we can call them if not magistrate?
Sir, they could be called Lok Sevak, district Lok Sevak in its broader context. And sir, certain places where magistrate DM are also called district collectors or divisional commissioner or district commissioners uh, to encompass the different kind of work that they
What is the
do.
origin of this word commissioner? What is the meaning of commissioner basically? If there
Somebody
is a
who heads a commission is the
uh-huh.
commissioner, and sir, I'm not too particularly
Okay,
sure about
okay, understood. Okay, you have studied the strategic management.
it. Yes, sir.
So I give you a situation. There is a struggling company. Let's suppose Air India, which has now been sold. So suppose you are appointed as the person to revive that company. So how you will strategize using the knowledge of your strategic management to revive this company?
Sure, sir. Sir, I'll take a moment on
Sure.
here. Sure, sir. Sir, first and foremost, for a company which is not doing well and for a turnaround strategy to work, I need to ensure slightly cost overhauling has to be done, where we are optimizing the cost and also increasing the revenue. So one of the things could be in terms of uh, cutting out on the non-profitable routes that Air India is currently adopting, and focusing on a smaller business definition where we are connecting only to, let's say, the metro cities or profitable route, and focusing upon them to build upon the operational synergies. So for that there may be manpower management has to be done better, and then the other thing could also be the operational efficiencies in terms of the fleet interoperability, where we are for example, Indigo has a one particular fleet only Boeing 747 or certain segment which are very highly, and they have 200 aircraft only of one particular kind, where so it's very interoperable across stations. So that is one of the things that Air India as a small firm rebuilding can also focus upon rather than having multiple fleet. The third could also be, sir, utilizing database and database pricing, or utilizing technology, how to optimize the cost further, where could be uh, buying futures for air traffic fuel to get into to lock the low cost for it, and
Right. Got it.
those kind of.
So what is something that you dislike about civil services?
Sir, one of the things that a civil service could also imbibe upon would be the flexibility to work in terms of uh, it is also they are kind of, we are restricted about with the role and with the kind of regulations that they have to follow, where a civil servant could fall into trap of following the rule rather than focusing on the outcome, where they get lost into the SOPs, and then the red taping can also happen. So they get lost into the procedure rather than having a focus also
So
on
should
the
we
outcome.
replace the Weberian bureaucracy with some other system?
Sir, replacing a Weberian bureaucracy is also a challenge for long, and it has been explored uh, by multiple countries and over the period also. But sir, replacing is not the option maybe, but we need to revamp, like what the government is also trying to do. We need to plug into the holes that that the machinery has, and probably re-energize it with the more data or more technology and more flexibility and more training.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
Sagar.
sir.
All the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you.